The clock shows 11:47 p.m. You're driving home alone on New Year's Eve when you see someone standing in the middle of an empty road. They're not moving. They're not crossing. They're just waiting. The heater in my car was broken. Not completely, but enough that I had to keep it on full blast just to feel a trickle of warmth. The fan made this rattling sound that filled the silence between songs on my playlist. It was 11:47 p.m. on New Year's Eve. I was driving home from my sister's place in the suburbs. She'd thrown a small party, just family and a few close friends. I'd left early because I had to work the next morning. Someone had to open the coffee shop, even on New Year's Day. The roads were almost empty. Most people were already wherever they planned to be, tucked into warm houses, counting down with people they loved. I didn't mind driving alone. I actually liked the quiet. The snow had stopped an hour ago, but the streets were still slick. I kept my speed low and my hands steady on the wheel. That's when I saw her. At first, I thought it was a trick of the headlights, a shadow or a mailbox or something my tired brain turned into a person. But as I got closer, I realized it wasn't a trick. There was a woman standing in the middle of the road. She wasn't moving, wasn't crossing. She was just standing there, facing my car like she'd been waiting for me. I eased off the gas and tapped the brakes gently. The last thing I needed was to skid on the ice. She didn't move. I stopped the car about 20 feet away and sat there, engine idling, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. She was wearing a long coat, dark, maybe black or navy. Her hair hung loose around her shoulders. Her face was pale in the headlights, but I couldn't make out her expression. I rolled down my window halfway. "Hey," I called out. "Are you okay?" She didn't answer, didn't even look at me. I waited a few seconds, then honked the horn lightly. Just a tap, still nothing. My stomach tightened. Something about the way she stood there, so still, so deliberate, felt wrong. I thought about backing up and turning around, finding another route home. But this was the only road that led back to town. The other way looped through miles of forest and farmland. I put the car in park and opened the door. The cold hit me immediately. It was the kind of cold that stung your lungs when you breathed. "Hey," I said again, louder this time. "Do you need help?" She tilted her head slightly, like she was listening to something I couldn't hear. Then she took a step toward me. I froze. There was something in her hand. At first, I thought it was a phone or a flashlight, but as she moved closer, the headlights caught the edge of it. A knife. A big one. The kind you'd use to carve a roast or chop vegetables. She was holding it down by her side, loose and casual, like it was the most normal thing in the world. My heart started pounding. "Okay," I said, backing toward the car. "I'm just gonna go." She took another step. Her face was still blank. No anger. No fear. Just nothing. I got back in the car and slammed the door. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely grip the wheel. I threw the car into reverse, but before I could hit the gas, she ran. Not toward me. Past me. She sprinted to the passenger side and pressed her face against the window. Her eyes locked on mine. They were wide and wet, like she'd been crying. But her mouth was twisted into something that wasn't quite a smile and wasn't quite a scream. She raised the knife and brought it down hard against the glass. The blade didn't break through, but the sound was horrible. A sharp, scraping thud that made my teeth ache. She did it again, and again. I hit the gas and the car lurched backward. She stumbled but didn't fall. She ran alongside the car, still hitting the window, still making that awful noise. I cranked the wheel and spun the car around. The tires slipped on the ice, but I didn't stop. I just kept my foot on the pedal and prayed the car would move. It did. She chased me for maybe 10 feet before she stopped. I looked in the rearview mirror and saw her standing in the middle of the road again, watching me go. The knife was still in her hand. I didn't stop driving until I reached the edge of town. My breath was coming fast and shallow. My hands were cramped from gripping the wheel so hard. I pulled into a gas station parking lot and sat there under the fluorescent lights, trying to calm down. I thought about calling the police. But what would I even say? There's a woman with a knife standing in the middle of Old Mill Road. Would they believe me? Would they even send someone? And what if she was gone by the time they got there? I checked the time on my phone. 11:58 p.m. 2 minutes until midnight. I decided to just go home. Lock the doors. Forget about it. But when I pulled out of the gas station, I saw something that made my stomach drop. There was a car parked on the side of the road about a block away. The driver's side door was open. The headlights were still on, and there was no one inside. I drove past slowly, trying to see if anyone was around, but the street was empty. Just the car sitting there with the door wide open and the engine running. I kept driving. When I got home, I locked every door and window. I turned on all the lights. I sat on my couch and waited for midnight. At 12 o'clock, fireworks started going off somewhere in the distance. I could hear people cheering and shouting. I didn't feel like celebrating. I kept thinking about the woman, about her face, about the knife, about the open car on the side of the road. The next morning, I checked the news. There was a story about a missing woman. Last seen leaving a party around 11:30 p.m. on New Year's Eve. Her car had been found abandoned on Old Mill Road. The driver's side door was open. The engine was still running. They were asking anyone with information to come forward. I stared at the article for a long time. I thought about calling the police, telling them what I saw, but I didn't. Because the woman in the photo, the missing woman, wasn't the woman I saw. The woman I saw looked just like her, but it wasn't her. I don't know how I knew that. I just did. I still drive past Old Mill Road sometimes. I've never seen her again, but every New Year's Eve I think about her, standing in the middle of the road, waiting for someone, maybe for me. You meet someone at a party on New Year's Eve. You spend the whole night together. They fall asleep in your apartment, but when you wake up, they're gone. The door is still locked from the inside, and there's no other way out. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever met someone who felt too good to be true? Someone who just vanished without a trace? I don't usually go to parties. I'm not antisocial or anything. I just prefer small groups, quiet conversations, the kind of night where you're not shouting over music to be heard. But my friend Marco convinced me to go to this New Year's Eve thing in Brooklyn. He said it would be low-key, just a rooftop, some drinks, good people. He was half right. The rooftop was nice. The drinks were good. But it wasn't exactly low-key. There were at least 60 people up there, all packed together under strings of lights. I grabbed a drink and found a spot near the edge where I could breathe. That's when I saw her. She was standing by herself near the bar, looking out at the city. She had this calm, focused expression, like she was memorizing the skyline. I walked over and said something stupid. I don't even remember what. Probably a joke about the cold. She smiled, and we started talking. Her name was Elaine. She told me she worked in graphic design, that she'd moved to the city 2 years ago from Portland, that she hated winter but loved snow. We talked for maybe 10 minutes before she grabbed my hand and pulled me toward the center of the rooftop where people were dancing. I'm not a good dancer, but it didn't matter. She made it easy. At midnight, we kissed. It felt like something out of a movie. Fireworks going off in the distance. Everyone around us cheering. Her hands on my face. After the countdown, she leaned in close and asked if I wanted to get out of there. I said yes. We took a cab back to my place in Greenpoint. The whole ride, she kept her hand in mine. She didn't talk much, just looked out the window and smiled. When we got to my apartment, I made us tea. We sat on the couch and talked for hours. She told me about her dog back in Portland, a golden retriever named Biscuit. She said she missed him every day. She told me her favorite artist was Edward Hopper, that she used to copy his paintings when she was in art school. She told me her mom called her Ellie, but everyone else called her Elaine. She told me she was scared of flying but loved traveling. I told her things too. Things I don't usually share with people I just met. By the time we stopped talking, it was almost 3 a.m. She yawned and said she was exhausted. I offered her the couch, but she said she'd rather stay with me. So we went to my room. We didn't do anything. We just lay there talking quietly until we both fell asleep. When I woke up, she was gone. The bed beside me was empty. The sheets were still warm. I sat up and called her name. No answer. I checked the bathroom, the kitchen, the living room. Nothing. That's when I noticed the door. It was still locked, not just closed. Locked. The deadbolt was turned. The chain was latched. I stood there staring at it, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. My apartment is on the 3rd floor. There's only one door. The windows don't open more than a few inches because of the child safety locks the landlord installed. There was no way out. But she was gone. I checked the windows anyway. All of them were closed, locked. I looked in the closets, under the bed, in the shower. She wasn't there. I sat on the edge of the couch and tried to think. Maybe I dreamed the whole thing. Maybe I'd been drunker than I thought and imagined her. But no. I could still smell her perfume on my pillow. The mug she'd used for tea was still sitting on the counter. I picked it up and turned it over in my hands. It was real. She was real. I spent the rest of the morning pacing around my apartment, trying to figure out what happened. I didn't have her number. I didn't even know her last name. All I had were the things she'd told me. The little details. Her dog, her favorite artist, the city she came from. I wrote them all down so I wouldn't forget. Later that afternoon, my phone rang. It was my friend Simon. He lives in London. We used to work together before he moved back home. He was calling to wish me a happy new year. We talked for a few minutes. He asked how my night was. I told him it was fine, that I went to a party, met someone, the usual. He laughed and said the same thing happened to him. He said he met a girl at a pub on New Year's Eve, that they hit it off, that she came back to his flat. But when he woke up, she was gone. I stopped listening for a second. Then I asked him what her name was. He said Elaine. My stomach dropped. I asked him to describe her. He did. Brown hair, green eyes, about 5'6". A small scar on her left hand from a childhood bike accident. I looked down at the mug I was still holding. I remembered Elaine showing me that scar, telling me the story. I asked Simon what else she told him. He said she worked in graphic design, that she was from Portland, that she had a dog named Biscuit. I felt cold all over. I told him to stop. I told him I met the exact same person. He went quiet. Then he said that was impossible. London is 5 hours ahead of New York. He met her at 11 p.m. on New Year's Eve, London time. I met her at 11:30 p.m. on New Year's Eve, New York time. That's roughly a 5.5 hour difference. A flight from London to New York takes at least 7 hours, usually 8. Even if she'd gotten on a plane the second she left his flat, she couldn't have made it to Brooklyn in time. The math didn't work. We stayed on the phone for almost an hour, comparing notes. Everything matched. The perfume she wore, the way she laughed, the stories she told, even the mug. Simon said she drank tea at his place too. Earl Grey, same as mine. We tried to come up with an explanation. Maybe there were 2 women, twins, sisters, coincidence. But we both knew that didn't make sense. Before we hung up, Simon said something that stuck with me. He said, "What if she wasn't real?" I didn't answer, because I didn't know what to say. I still don't. I tried looking her up online, searched every variation of her name I could think of, checked social media, art websites, design portfolios. Nothing. No one named Elaine from Portland with a dog named Biscuit and a scar on her left hand. It's been almost a year now. I still have the mug, and I can't bring myself to throw it away. Sometimes, late at night, I think about her. About where she went, about how she left. About whether she was ever really there at all. And I wonder if somewhere, in another city, in another time zone, someone else is holding a mug and wondering the same thing. You're spending New Year's Eve at a remote cabin with your best friend. It's peaceful, quiet, just the two of you and the snow. Then you see a light on the frozen lake, and you hear a child calling for help. Before we dive in, leave a comment. Have you ever been somewhere so quiet that every sound felt wrong? Let me know where you're listening from tonight. The cabin belonged to my uncle. He'd owned it for years, tucked away on the edge of a small lake in Vermont. He rarely used it anymore, so when I asked if my friend Josh and I could spend New Year's Eve there, he said yes without hesitation. He just told me to keep the pipes from freezing and lock up when we left. Simple enough. Josh and I had been friends since college. We both lived in Boston now, both worked jobs that ate up most of our time. This trip was supposed to be a break, a chance to disconnect and reset before the new year. We arrived on the afternoon of December 31st. The roads were clear, but the temperature was brutal. Single digits. The kind of cold that makes your face ache. The cabin was small but warm. 2 bedrooms upstairs, a living room with big windows that looked out over the lake, and a wood-burning stove that my uncle swore could heat the whole place. He was right. By the time we got the fire going, the cabin felt cozy, safe. We spent the afternoon unpacking, making food, and catching up. Josh had just ended a long-term relationship. He didn't want to talk about it much, but I could tell he was still processing. That's part of why we came out here. To give him space. To give both of us space. By 11 p.m., we were upstairs with a couple of beers, sitting by the windows and watching the snow fall. It was the kind of quiet you don't get in the city. No cars, no voices. Just the faint creak of the cabin settling and the occasional pop from the stove downstairs. Josh had his phone out, scrolling through messages from friends back home. Everyone sending New Year's texts. I was just staring out at the lake. It was completely frozen. Had been for weeks, according to my uncle. The surface was smooth and white, lit faintly by the moon. That's when I saw the light. At first I thought it was a reflection. Maybe the moonlight catching the ice at a weird angle. But then it flashed. Bright, sudden. Like someone had turned on a floodlight and then turned it off just as fast. I sat up. "Did you see that?" I asked. Josh looked up from his phone. "See what?" "Out on the lake. There was a light." He leaned forward and squinted through the window. "I don't see anything." "It was there, just for a second." He shrugged and went back to his phone. I kept watching. A minute later, it happened again. The same bright flash, closer this time, or at least it felt closer. "There," I said, pointing. Josh looked up again, but by the time he did, the light was gone. "I think you're seeing things, man," he said. "I'm not." He smiled. "You want to go check it out?" I hesitated. The truth was I didn't. Something about that light felt wrong. But I also didn't want to seem paranoid. "Yeah," I said. "Let's go." We threw on our coats and boots and headed downstairs. The cold hit us the second we stepped outside. It was worse than before. The kind of cold that makes your lungs burn. Josh grabbed a flashlight from the cabin and we started walking toward the lake. The ice was solid under our feet, thick and safe. We were maybe 20 feet from the shore when we heard it. A voice. Faint at first, almost lost in the wind. But then it got louder. Help! Josh and I stopped. Did you hear that? He whispered. I nodded. Help, please. It was a child's voice, high and desperate, coming from somewhere out on the lake. Josh turned on the flashlight and pointed it toward the sound. At first, we didn't see anything, just empty ice stretching out into the dark. But then the light flashed again, and this time I saw where it was coming from. There was a figure out there, small, maybe 30 yards away. A kid, standing in the middle of the frozen lake. What the hell? Josh said. The kid was waving at us, jumping up and down. Help! Help me! Josh started walking toward him. Wait, I said, grabbing his arm. Something's not right. There's a kid out there, Josh said. We have to help him. There's no one else around. No houses, no roads. Where did he come from? Josh pulled his arm away. I don't know, but we can't just leave him. He started walking again. I followed, even though every instinct I had was screaming at me to turn around. The closer we got, the more I could see. The kid was wearing a thin jacket. No hat, no gloves. He couldn't have been more than 8 or 9 years old. Are you okay? Josh called out. The kid didn't answer. He just kept waving. And then the light flashed again. Blinding. So bright I had to close my eyes and turn away. When I opened them again, the kid was gone. Where'd he go? Josh said, spinning around. The ice was empty. No footprints, no sign that anyone had been there. This isn't right, I said. We need to go back. Josh didn't argue this time. We turned and started walking toward the cabin. That's when I heard it. Laughter. A child's laughter, coming from behind us. I looked over my shoulder. The kid was back, but this time he wasn't waving. He was just standing there, staring at us. His face was pale, too pale, and his eyes were dark, empty. Run, I said. Josh didn't need to be told twice. We ran. The ice was slippery, and I almost fell twice, but I didn't stop. I could hear the laughter behind us, getting closer. When we reached the shore, Josh grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the cabin. We burst through the door and slammed it shut. Josh locked it, then locked it again. We stood there, breathing hard, staring at each other. What the hell was that? Josh said. I didn't answer. I walked over to the window and looked out at the lake. The kid was still there, standing in the same spot and watching the cabin. And then the light flashed one more time. When it faded, the kid was gone. We didn't go back outside that night. We sat upstairs with the lights on, waiting for midnight. When the clock hit 12 o'clock, we didn't celebrate. We just sat there in silence. At some point, I fell asleep. When I woke up, it was morning. Josh was already awake, sitting by the window. Did you see him again? I asked. He shook his head. I've been watching all night. Nothing. We packed up and left that afternoon. On the drive home, Josh told me he'd done some research on his phone. He said there was a story about the lake, about a kid who drowned there in the 1980s. He'd fallen through the ice on New Year's Eve. They never found his body. I didn't ask for more details. I didn't want to know. We haven't been back to the cabin since. My uncle asked me about it once. Asked if everything was okay. I told him it was fine. But I think he knew I was lying. Because a few months later, he sold the place. He didn't tell me why. But I think I already know. Thank you for listening to these 3 unique New Year's Eve stories. I hope they gave you that gentle chill we all love. Stay safe out there tonight. And remember, some countdowns are better left unwatched.